This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming at you Friday morning. It's October 13th. Let's get right into it, Kyle. For today's show, we are going to, zoom out a bit. We've been doing a lot of what have they been talking about at training camp? Those type of episodes. We're just going to zoom out, do bold predictions. You and I have done this for a couple years at about this time entering the season. I can't imagine we've had an incredible hit rate on these predictions, but that's the point of them. It's that's the way I went about it. Was I was like, okay, thinking about things that could happen, but if I had to bet $100 on it actually happening, I would need some juice on it.
Well, happy Friday the 13th.
Thank you.
I know we're getting into it because we've had about 45 minutes of tech issues, so we do need to shout out Cooper Carlson for keeping us young and keeping us plugged into the internet. But no, this week has been weird, right? I know that you've been going to practices and stuff. The team got back on Sunday from Abu Dhabi. They're into more of a normal training camp schedule. But it kind of felt to me obviously, I'm a big brunch guy, but last week felt like when you go to brunch and you get there and you're all excited, the Wolves, they have some games coming up. And then you get free coffee and it's okay, vibes are great. And then they're actually, it's going to be 75-minute wait. That's what it's been like. It's the Wolves played, almost back-to-back games in Abu Dhabi. They're in the morning, everyone's vibing, and then just a week off or more. So I don't know how this is pod number 4 for you this week without any real basketball to talk about. So I think bold predictions is a nice way to spice it up. I've got some really good talking points and things I'm not concerned about, but worried about or just thinking about as the season kind of starts to pick up again. But yeah, I don't know. Do you want to start with your first one? I've got some spicier ones, but I've also got some just nice general what I think will really happen this upcoming season.
I want you to start, and I want you to start with your spiciest.
Ooh, okay. I don't need to read a pre-prepared statement on this, but I believe everyone is well aware of how I feel about Kyle Anderson. I deemed him the greatest free agent signing in franchise history. That bar is low, but this team doesn't even sniff the playoffs last year without him, right? He was everything you wanted. He obviously slid into kind of the power forward mold when Carl went down for those 52 games. Just Lake Slow-Mo, big fan. Love Kyle Anderson. For you sickos at home that like to put big dates into your calendar, the NBA trade deadline is February 8th, 2024.
Okay.
My first bold prediction will be that Kyle Anderson will not be on the team on February 9th, 2024. Wow. And to me, that just comes down to, I thought the pod you did with Jace the other day, you kind of talked about rotations and stuff. I thought that was really eye-opening, and it kind of backed up what I've been thinking. Again, it would be great if Kyle Anderson finished his career here. Mm-hmm. But when you really start to break down rotations in minutes, Kyle Anderson signed last summer, gets this big role, right? I mean, he is pretty much the leader of the team. He's running things. He's playing, the team was going through hell. He kept going. But now with Naz in the fold, Naz is making more money than Kyle. There's just so many people in his way. Mm-hmm. If this team were to try to make an adjustment prior to the trade deadline, and they have an aggressive front office, let's say they need more shooting, what other options do you have in a trade to give up, right? I don't think they're going to give up the young guys that are on super, super good Gupta specials. You're not going to move Ant or Jaden. I don't think they pivot off of the big experiment in season. So you just start to find what are the options fantasy football. What are the pieces you can put in a trade to get something back?
Sure.
And I think it's Kyle. And I also think I've asked you politely to not talk about second apron for a while and stuff, but that stuff is not going to go away. If this team doesn't think that,
it's the first thing I wrote down as soon as you said it.
Well, I mean, you do have Carl and Rudy and Naz taking up all this money, and now you're going to hopefully pay Jaden and Ant. If you don't think Kyle's going to re-sign with you next summer, or you don't want to re-sign him, it's another thing that's well, maybe he just gets floated around at the deadline. And that,
and he would have interest, man. That's what I'm thinking too, is and again, we're talking in hypotheticals, bold predictions, whatever. I think about Kyle Anderson. What if you're Denver and you got Kyle Anderson for your second year? What if Denver's always had what are we doing with our backup 5 sort of thing? Mm-hmm. I weirdly think because there's no Nikola Jokic comparison in the entire league. But like style similarity of games, I like weirdly think the player who plays the closest to Jokic stylistically and maybe speed is Kyle Anderson. Like, could you just see him on one of those teams where he's just ends up kind of being, maybe it's a second unit like he was for the Wolves last year? I just think we could get to the beginning of February and be like, man, there's like 12 teams out there who could use a Kyle Anderson. So I'm with that. And then, yeah, sorry, I kind of cut you off, but yeah, he's on an expiring contract on a team that is entering an off season of a major financial crunch. The logic checks out. I got no pushback on it.
If you turn off injuries, there's just no way Kyle Anderson plays, I don't know, man, like even half of what he did last year as a role in minutes. And again, like some of this stuff really does matter, right? Like the politics of how much a guy gets paid. I know Finch loves Kyle Anderson.
That's not politics. That's economics.
Okay, yeah, that too. But like I know Finch loves Kyle, but he also loves Mike. Like I mean, Finchy can only love so many guys. And again, I'm hopeful that Kyle Anderson probably is here for the full season because he promotes winning. But I was just starting to think, like, I was looking up dates in the calendar, like, oh, the trade deadline is the 8th. Who on the team is worth something that you would give up that's not, like Kyle Anderson is way more valuable this season than Leonard Miller is, but Leonard Miller makes no money, basically. So that was, I'll start with my spiciest one, but that's kind of just something I have in the back of my mind, that if this team were to find a need that they want to address before the deadline this season, Kyle Anderson's probably the piece you dangle out there to make a move.
And you bring up Mike there too, who again, kind of economically, right, has the same sort of setup. Also another player in his 30s like Kyle is. But to what you kind of led with this whole topic is there's a bunch of other guys who can fill in that are power forwards on this team. Not a lot of point guards. I mean, again, we think there's a lot of guys who can lead ball handle, but if you traded Mike Conley within the same sort of way that you're talking about trading Kyle Anderson, now you don't have a starting point guard on your team. And I think it's the difference there.
Easier. This is literally just a gut. I think it's easier to re-sign Mike next summer to a team-friendly deal to fit into whatever you got left than it is for Kyle, because if you sign Mike to a team-friendly deal, he's going to be your starting point guard for at least 60 games.
Yeah.
Kyle Anderson's probably not going to take less money and less of a role on a team that has not only Naz, Cat, and Rudy, but also at some point, Josh Minot needs a chance. Leonard Miller needs a chance. Hell, Luka Garza might need a chance. There's just so many bigs, and Kyle's best position on this team is big. So that's why I think what I think.
No, I like that one. I'll do my first one, which is kind of related in a weird sort of way. I wrote down the Rudy Gobert and Naz-Reid pairing ends up being awesome. The way Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert was awesome last year. Rudy Gobert, Kyle Anderson 2.0. And that maybe doesn't sound that bold, but I made bullet points as to why I think it is bold. One, it was a terrible pairing last season, minus 12.7 net rating. Here I have that I can put up on the screen as well. This is just look at who Rudy's pairings last season with Ant plus 1.2, with McDaniels plus 1.9, with D'Lo plus 0.2, with Kyle Anderson plus 7.1, with Mike Conley plus 3.2, with Towns 0.6, with Noel minus 3.1, with Prince minus 2.5, with Rivers minus 7, and with Naz-Reid minus 12.7. It was disastrous whenever Naz-Reid and Rudy Gobert were on the floor. So obviously, even if you just take that number and you're like, oh, they were neutral, that would be a major improvement. I also think why this could happen is that was a relatively small sample size, right? Naz and Rudy only shared the floor for 199 minutes last season. And that's obviously going to be more this season. I like the idea of the two, right? Where it's a more offensive big and a more defensive big. That's the kind of obvious part of it. But what I think makes it bold and why it was just a bold decision in the first place to go get or to re-sign Naz is that he's never been good with another big. And he's never really played much with another big on the floor. I mean, him and Cat, as I have up on the screen again too, terrible numbers every time they've ever been on the floor. Minus 7.3, minus 10.3, minus 2.4. And then his rookie season, plus 33.3, but that was only in 10 minutes. Naz has never worked with another center. And I am a lot more open. I've always kind of been open-minded to the idea, even though the numbers have said the obvious. My theory with Naz working with the center is that they've never gave it extended stretches of time. It's like 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, whatever. I think you're going to consistently see Naz-Reid playing with Rudy Gobert. And I think in some of that consistency, you're going to get a lot more production from the pairing.
I think this is related to what you're talking about, but I just want to ask, because we want to use bold predictions as a fun jumping off point to have some back and forth conversations. Do you think, and it could change, but I was looking up all these different betting odds at DraftKings, and we'll get into them in a sec, but do you think Naz-Reid will be this team's pseudo sixth man, or will that change on a nightly basis? Like, because I'm saying, like, do you think Naz-Reid, the first sub could typically be Naz for Carl?
I mean, it could be that, but I think what we're really asking with six man is like, who's the guy who plays the most minutes off the bench?
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
And I think to your question, I think that could situationally be Kyle Anderson, could situationally be Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and could situationally be Naz. Like, I don't think one of the three of them is clearly at the top of the bench pecking order, and think that will probably change based on opponent and probably change based on effectiveness of, you know, how it plays out and actually works or not.
I'm with that. And I'll just get into my second one. So if you have nothing else.
Can I actually play? I asked Naz about the pairing at practice yesterday or 2 days ago or something. I'll play that clip here. You had that drop-off pass to Rudy for a dunk in one of the games, and I think you played more with Rudy than you played with Cat in those two games. What are you learning about playing with Rudy? It's not something you did a ton last season. Like, how do you two fit best together? What do you guys do to make that happen?
Well, the way he plays is kind of like completely opposite to how I play. So that's like for one, and then like for two, it's just like learning how to react to how he moves and vice versa. You know, knowing where he's going to be and where I should be. Obviously, that's opposite of him. Not getting in each other's ways. You know, and that's kind of easier than being in a position where I'm with Kat, which we can do, but like I said before, we do the same thing, so it's kind of like a little bit weird in some aspects. And with both of us playing with Rudy, I think it's like it's just day and night. You know what I'm trying to say? If that makes sense.
Lendale White and Chris Johnson. Remember that?
Yeah, that's I can't get enough. I know I have my biases and the players I like, and you kind of stand Naz-Reid forever. I just can't really get enough of Naz-Reid, as much as like it's fun to do the Naz-Reid thing on tweet. Like I think he's one of the smartest. We've always heard from everyone in the building that he's the most competitive, but I think he's also just one of the smartest players. I mean, his whole story, again, we've said this ad nauseum, but like it's just awesome. He just wasn't drafted, and now he's a core piece of a franchise, and he's making good money. And I thought that was a really good answer, actually. And I'm excited to see, because as you just put it on the screen, like the numbers don't really. You're kind of going against the grain here. That's why it's a bold prediction. Is that he's not really ever had great success with another big.
The numbers suggest it should be like the worst pairing that the Wolves play the entire season. And I'm suggesting it'll be one of the best.
I like that. That's spicy. I'm going to move into my next one.
Should we hit the falling knife thing first?
Yeah. Oh, we get 24 hours from now. Let's get it.
Let's do it. I want to just make sure we hit this early, so people, if they're listening on Friday, know that oops, I got some sound playing there. We don't need that. This Saturday at Falling Knife. I'm really excited to hang out as we have last year at this time, and get together with a bunch of fans, kind of Wolves Brewery takeover. Like I've been telling everybody, 4:00 this Saturday at Falling Knife, kind of start. Me and Britt will do a live show at 5. Then the Wolves play the Knicks, and we'll watch that there at 6:30. So even, if you're kind of busy during the day on Saturday and you just want to come to the game part, that's totally fine. We're just kind of making it a late afternoon into evening, full day at Falling Knife. We got merch to give away. I got right here. I got some Wolves tickets to give away. I think this is 16 Wolves tickets to give away. So I think it'd be fun. You know, we want to all get together, and we want you all to get to know Falling Knife as well. So again, tomorrow, Saturday, 4 p.m. I'll be there. Britt will be there. Cooper Carlson will be there with us, and we'll have some fun.
It feels like a festival season, or like a festival, because I know that the friends over at CND and Crunch Wears No Pants had an event last night to kind of kick off this festival. I know our friend John Krasinski and Michael Grady are having one tonight, and then it really
go to that too. Go to all of them.
Yeah, and you and Britt are kind of like the Red Hot Chili Peppers then on like night 3 of the festival. So I didn't know you had that many free tickets. So let's remind people again, like come get beer. They'll have merch, free tickets to games. So shout out to the Wolves for hooking us up with that.
Sure.
It's going to be, and then back to this dumb brunch analogy, like you're finally going to get to eat again because there's real basketball tomorrow. We don't have to focus on how they looked against a decrepit Dallas Mavericks roster.
Yeah, and I was thinking at the Open when you were just like talking about the long breaks, like it's about to start coming like fast. Like there's a game on Saturday, there's a home game against Maccabi on Tuesday, then they're in Chicago on Thursday. So if we have had this slow ramp up, like it's gonna pick up here fast. And I mean, I know it's preseason, but I felt like I learned some things. I think it's a worthwhile experience to watch this team. I mean, maybe just the first half, but they're taking it seriously. The preseason, like playing their guys and trying to catch a rhythm because they know they didn't have a rhythm when they started last season. So I actually think it's like as interesting of a preseason as I can remember from a Wolves perspective, from actually watching the game standpoint, you know?
I'm so hyped because it's obviously, yes, it's Friday the 13th, but we're like 2 weeks away from possibly just like, remember, like we're 2 weeks away from tweeting out the referee report. We're all pissed off the next morning, or like we're all so excited for this to come back, much like I am with fall. And then like, it's going to be rainy and we're like, God, I hate this team, or we're going to be calling for people's heads and stuff. So we're a couple weeks away from
Vibes are high
from getting mad again online. So, okay.
Yeah. Give me your second prediction.
My second bold prediction, and I have this all pulled up from last year as well, but I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker will finish the season top 5 in total minutes played.
Okay.
So
give me the why.
The bold part about that is that obviously you would assume injuries turned off, that Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, and Karl-Anthony Towns will probably finish the season top 4 minutes played. They are your 4 best players. Mm-hmm. But Mike Conley is going to start at point guard. Kyle Anderson, I've already kind of said, is your Swiss Army knife off the bench. And then you have this Naz-Rudy character who's making 12 times what he was making last year. So there's going to be a high end. Then you talk about Shake Milton and Troy Brown, and do any of the third stringers get a chance? I think it's bold enough to say that Nickeil, while not starting, and based on what we just said earlier, not necessarily being the guaranteed 6-man, I just think he's going to force his way into as many rotations and lineups as possible. We've only had 2 really weird preseason games, but in both those games, I thought it was very telling that when Jaden was out, you put in Nickeil. When Ant was out, you put in Nickeil. I think Finch, while he says more often than not how many favorite players he has or how many guys he likes, I think Nickeil, gun to his head, is maybe one of his 3 or 4 favorite players back to their time in New Orleans. So I just think Nickeil can be the point guard, starting point guard on nights when Mike's out. I'm pretty open about, I don't even think Mike Conley should play north of 65 games. I know he's rejuvenated, all that stuff, but if you actually think this is a team that's going to make a run, you want him healthy for April and May. You don't need him in January and February. But if he can play behind Mike, start for Mike in spots, if he can start for Ant in spots, if he's going to start for Jaden in spots, like he's just going to accumulate so many minutes. And again, I just think Finch really likes him. So I think he finishes the season top 5 in minutes played. And when looking up last year's team, I'm just asking you, Dane, do you know who was 6th last year in total minutes played? Or do you want to do the top? Do you want to do the top 5? How? Okay, that's sad. Like, if you look at some of the guys, I know Jake Painting was on this, but like some of the guys that got a lot of minutes last year, they've just replaced that with like better players. So, do you have a problem with that? Top 5 in minutes?
No, I was trying to think of a devil's advocate, and I think the devil's advocate is Shake Milton. Like, how much do those 2 whatever kind of share the same part of the minutes pie, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think with both Shake and with Nikhil at similar positions, Finch is very interested in because they kind of give you different things. I think my guess would be we're like 6 weeks into the season and we kind of like both of them as like bench 1-2s. And with Nikhil, we're excited about the on-ball defense and the spot-up shooting, and we're a little bit concerned about offensively when he has to handle maybe turnovers, some stuff like that, like the playmaking element of it. And then I think Shake's maybe like the inverse 6 weeks into it, where we're like, man, this is a playmaking option. This is a guy that can go finish all the way to the rim, where Nikhil not so much all the way there. But then maybe defensively, we're like, he's acclimating to a new system. I kind of asked him about this yesterday, where just because this kind of has my like antenna raised defensively for him, like he played his entire career in as conservative of a defensive scheme as you could have, right? Like Embiid back at the rim, it's the same thing over and over again. And I mean, you look at it on the surface and you're like, okay, well, he goes from Joel Embiid to Rudy Gobert defensively. Those are two extremely similar players. But we know how it is. Like there's going to be Naz at the 5 sometimes, Cat at the 5 sometimes. Even Rudy is going to play more aggressive sometimes. It's going to be a different defensive team for Shake to adjust to, though. I mean, he's huge. He's like 6'6", 7'1" wingspan. Like he should be a good defender. But I wonder, again, in the first like 4 or 6 weeks of the season, if when we're pulling up, the defensive rating stats, do maybe the Wolves give up 5-6 more points per 100 possessions when Shake's on the floor versus when Nikhil's on the floor? I could see that. And then vice versa. I bet you the offense is maybe better with Shake on the floor than it is with Nikhil. I mean, it's kind of dependent on who they play with, but I'm really excited about both of them. And I don't think it's one of those things where it wouldn't be crazy to suggest almost anybody on the team is fifth in minutes, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
Because to your Mike point, or anybody from the bench could be assert themselves into that role. We know Ant and Carl and Rudy are going to get theirs there, but I do think the fifth in minute spot is definitely available there.
I just thought it was telling, again, small sample size, but I thought it was telling that when Ant didn't start or didn't miss the first game, that Nikhil started. It's like, okay, that makes sense. And then when Jaden didn't start in the second game and it was Nikhil again, I was like, maybe not. Maybe we see a completely different rotation on Saturday against the Knicks, but it seemed like when the first domino of that big starting 5 was out, Finch's first move was to just plug Nikhil in, and that's why I think he would have the upper hand on a 6-man kind of role.
Because you wouldn't be saying this if Nikhil or if Shake Milton would have started the first game when 100%. Ant was out, or Troy Brown started the second game when Jaden was out. You'd feel more like, oh, maybe Nikhil is more in the morass of the bench guys. That does signal that he's as close to the 6th man thing as anybody from that.
Some of the guys who played high minutes for the Timberwolves last year were more ass than the guys they're going to be playing this year.
My second bold prediction, I had to, this is going to be taken as a negative one. I had to put one of those in there. And we're doing bold predictions. It's that Ant doesn't make the All-Star team. And here's the thing, the prediction coming true doesn't mean that they're going to be bad. I'm thinking about this through the sense I have in this moment at October 13th, where so much of the focus and adjustment and what we're trying to grow and enable right now is a new style in place to get more out of Rudy. You know what I'm saying? And Cat and the pairing there, and really being we need those tides to raise, because those tides are going to raise all boats. And there's kind of this baked in, Ant's going to do his thing regardless. And I agree with that. I think we could just be at February All-Star time and Ant has just kind of the same numbers as last year, which are really good, right? There might not be the usage available that, given how they're going to play, to really give Ant the bandwidth to make the quote unquote massive leap that so many people are predicting. Even if he doesn't make that leap, it doesn't mean that he can't do it. It might mean that they're prioritizing something else. And in an awesome Western Conference, maybe he's like the first or second guy that's pinched out of the group and he doesn't get in this time as a injury replacement. That was one that came to my mind.
Yeah, I would almost only push back and say it's not that bold. Only in the sense that
it's bold if you look at like these ESPN top 100s. What they was he like 12th or 13th? I'm in this prediction saying he's not 12 or 13 even in the West.
Right. And yeah, you and I have kind of talked about this offline a little bit. And I mean, this guy is the limit for the kid, and he is the straw that stirs the drink. I do think his share price has just gotten a little inflated, where it's like, could Anthony Edwards be a top 5 MVP candidate? Like, I don't know yet. Right, one day for sure, I think he could win an MVP. But sometimes you get so focused on like his rise and how he looked for Team USA and stuff, and then you forget like, the West is just a bloodbath of talent and talented guards and wings. So I like that
Team
one.
USA played a different way than the Wolves are going to play. Not that one is going to prove to be right or wrong or whatever. Like, they believe this style of play that they're going to bring into this season, which, as talking to the coaches and players, is going to be an adjustment from last season, is best for this group. It might not be best for Anthony Edwards in terms of like individually highlighting him to put up crazy individual stats.
Yeah, because you're adding 52 more games of Karl-Anthony Towns back into the mix, right? It's like Ant's raw numbers aren't, and you have a better bench, and you have, guys that are going to have higher roles like Naz-Rudy. So I like that one. Would that mean, I don't know if this is on your list, but would you then be saying also that you don't have him making All NBA?
That's what I was writing down. That I'm like, there's been a couple of guys who have not made the All-Star. I remember Goran Dragic did one year. I want to say like Beal. I think it's happened twice, like in the last 8 years or something, where a guy didn't make All-Star and then did make All NBA. And I think both times it was, for sure, the Dragic one was in just like the loaded Western Conference, where there's just so many guards, and he was having an awesome year, but like only 6 guards or whatever can make the Western Conference All-Star team. So I wouldn't say not making the All-Star team precludes the possibility that he can make All NBA. Maybe it's the classic like snubbed, and I'm gonna prove everyone wrong, and then the rest of February, March, April, he's like 35-8, and you're like, okay, this guy needs to be on All NBA, which now is not position dependent. To make All NBA, you just need to be a top 15 player in the NBA, not a top 6 guard or whatever position you're labeled at.
And you also need to play a minimum amount of games, right?
Yep, 65, I believe.
So that might work in his favor. And then again, probably not reporting here, but I would imagine Anthony Edwards is well aware of how important All NBA is for him this season. There are $40 to $50 million on the line.
Yes, and again, this is not a prediction. This is a bold prediction, and I think, I don't know, like, what would you say the odds are that Ant makes All-Star team? Like 70%?
I was going to say like 60-40, 70-30. Yeah, I wouldn't say 80%. 80%'s high.
Yeah. Yes, and particularly again in the West. So I guess it's not. I mean, if it is 60. Then I'm saying 49. That's not
okay.
Not a huge difference there. You want to give me your third one?
Yeah. So I did this research early this morning, and I'm pretty sure I have this right. But NBA teams typically play about 7 games in a 2-week span. Sometimes you got 4 games, sometimes you got 3. So I'm deeming this bold prediction my perfect pay period. The Timberwolves will have their first 7-game win streak since 2004.
Okay.
As I'm watching in the baseball playoffs too, kind of with how random that can be, I think trying to pin down exactly how far this team could go is a little bit of a crapshoot, because the West is such a bloodbath, and you got guys like Ja out for a while. I don't know, but if this goes back to last year, what we thought when they were bringing in Carl and Rudy and stuff, I do think this team more than ever is just going to chew up wins. And wins in certain moments where, I mean, if anyone who listens to this has followed the NBA enough, there are just ebbs and flows to the energy of the league. It's part of the reason the new in-season tournament has been added. Is just it really can, January, February, it's cold in a lot of places, and guys are sitting out or whatever. I just think this team is going to have streaks. They might also have a 7-game losing streak, but I also was just wanted to bring that up because I can't believe that this team hasn't won 7 straight games in 20 years. I just wanted to bring that up. So
I remember looking that up. Was that last year that they were at 6? Did they tie 6 last year?
They've had 6 a couple times. Yeah.
No, I think that's. Did you have a time? Do you want to exacto this with what month does it happen? When does it happen?
Well, I'll just.
I knew you looked this
I'll
up.
parlay this into it too, but I'll tie this bold prediction. The Minnesota Timberwolves will play at least 1 game in Las Vegas this season, which would mean the Final Four for the play-in tournament is in Las Vegas. So I'm telling you that I think they're going to make the play-in Final Four or the in-season Final Four. But I really do think if they were to hit a 7-game win streak, it's going to be like November, December, because I think they just, again, I'm basing every take off of 2 random games, but they just look more professional than some of the other teams I'm watching right now on preseason League Pass.
And they have more continuity than a lot of the Western Conference teams. Yeah.
Not to spin this podcast into a different direction, but last year it seemed like depth was kind of their backbone, and it was because they lost Carl, and you plug in Naz, you plug in Kyle, and we've always said now that this year is even deeper. But I wonder if continuity will be the one-word term to describe this team more than depth. It's just there's not a lot of other teams around the league that have.
I'm hearing the word continuity asked in about 3 questions per media scrum here.
Wait, is this the most?
It's a topic for sure.
I mean, is this the most continuity? Someone asked me this. Is this the most continuity Ant has had since he joined the team? Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything because the bar was so low. But more importantly, is this maybe the most continuity the team Carl's ever had? Right? How many?
For sure.
So I just wonder if that is, trust falls. This team knows each other better. I didn't love the going overseas thing for preseason because I think it can be taxing as a traveler. But from what I've heard from other people that were on the trip, it's these guys were just hanging out 24/7. I think that matters too for a team that was punching everything, including themselves. So, yeah, I do think they have just a couple hot weeks. And I don't think there are 5 teams. I mean, the Minnesota Timberwolves, no team is better designed and has a history of a franchise to win something like the in-season tournament. That would be the first banner this team's ever really hung. That would be hilarious. We won some games in December, and we're going to have a moment where we pull the flag and it raises up in the ceiling. So I think they just win games that other teams wouldn't be as the Warriors, right? They don't worry about a January win. The Wolves are going to win those games, because they have the depth and the continuity. So
I think even particularly November,
yeah.
I'm with that really in that there's an opportunity for this team early on in the season to stack some. That should be the goal 100%. And to do that, to tie it into mine, I think the way any of these real, you're saying the 7-game win streak or the play-in tournament, we're looking for a consistent high water mark, right? Which last season's team didn't do ever, right? It was the perennial 500 team. They were always up and down, and nothing stayed good for 2 weeks, or nothing stayed bad for 2 weeks. It always came back and forth. And I think when I think about why that happened, I think it was because the offense was so inconsistent. And the defense was weirdly consistent throughout the year. They were 8th at the end of the season, 8th in defensive rating and 23rd in offensive rating. And that is, gonna be the difference maker this season, I think, is being able to bring those things closer to each other. And my third bold prediction is that this team this season is better offensively than it is defensively from a offensive rating versus defensive rating standpoint.
I like that. Yeah. There's a lot of colors on my screen right now. So you think they're
shout out cleaningtheglass.com.
You think they're a better offensive team this year than defensive team?
Yeah, which I again believe is bold because they're 23rd in offense last year and 8th on defense. I think my belief with Carl is that if you get him for a healthy season, he is a walking top 10 offense. That we've seen that previously in his career. I feel pretty confident about his health and his ability to kind of have that same impact on on the group this season. They've been a top 10 offense before with like just Carl, now you have Ant in the mix as an offensive weapon. You have Rudy, who is an efficient offensive player if and when he's taking his shots, aka dunks. I don't see why this team can't be a top 10 offensive team. And I think what I'm also baking in here is maybe a little bit of defensive regression, right?
Mm-hmm.
For that to come true. And I think it makes sense that there might be some defensive regression because they really, once things kind of went haywire last season with Cat getting hurt, they went back to just kind of playing like one way. They're like, all right, defensively, like funnel everything to Rudy. We're going to be the rim protection team. We're going to be the drop coverage team. We're going to do that, right? And what we're going to see with Carl in the mix, Carl playing half the minutes at the 5, Rudy playing half the minutes at the 5, is two completely different styles of defense. And that's hard. That's hard to do. It's a great strategy. It's a necessary thing to prepare yourself for the playoffs, in my opinion. But that's going to have its ebbs and flows and probably might make them not a top 10 defensive team this season. Though I got to admit, it seems like their focus is like, let's be a top 10 defensive team because we think the offense is going to come around. They're going to be super intentional about defense. I just wonder if the offense might be substantially better than a lot of people are giving them credit for.
So again, for the listeners, it is your belief or your bold prediction that this team will have a better offense than defense, and they will be, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe an offensive juggernaut with a healthy Carl.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So can I take a 30? Can I use this moment to talk about, I know we're going to do some like kind of win projection stuff maybe next week or maybe some bets, but so I was just scrolling through DraftKings and I had just like a list of bets because someone got me started with like, so their win total is 44.5, right? And I know that ESPN did like their projections, Kevin Pelton and like had him at like 47.7. But I was just shopping around for like last year I looked and the Wolves were like top 5 and like Rudy Gobert was top 5 in the defensive player of the year odds and all this crazy stuff. And I don't know if you saw the GM survey or whatever, but the Wolves, did you see the GM survey?
I saw like highlights of it.
Okay, so my biggest takeaway was like not a lot of respect for the team, like in terms of placing in the West, a little Ant stuff in terms of being athletic, like no mention of Jaden on perimeter defenders. But there was one reoccurring theme in all that I want to get to. So they're minus 150 to make the playoffs, not great money. They're plus 550 to win the Northwest Division, which again, they're in the same division as Denver. I don't see that happening. That. They're 70 to 1 to win the finals. Don't love that.
But let's be real. You put $10 down.
No, but hear me out though, because this is something I think is an opportunity. Ant's 30 to 1 to win MVP. I think that actually those are bad odds. I mean, they were like 50 to 1 before he had his Team USA thing. But there's one bet that I thought was really interesting, and it would back up what your bold prediction is. Chris Finch is 28 to 1 to win Coach of the Year.
Oh, I like that way more than Ant to win MVP.
And in the GM survey, Chris Finch was like the second most honored Timberwolves employee behind Ant. It was like who runs the best offensive sets, and it was like Finch was third. Like there was a couple other things about Finch being a highly ranked coach, and I just think that if this team were to finish top 4 in the West, let's say, and it's like Denver, Golden State, the Lakers, and Minnesota, Finch is going to get all of those Coach of the Year votes, right? So I just thought it was, at 28 to 1, if you run this thing 28 times, do you think the Wolves can have a simulation where they do win 50 games or, all these other things?
And he's going to totally get credit for making the disaster of Gobert and Towns, if he can, right? Yeah. Like they probably in this scenario win like 50 games, right? And they're the 2 or 3 seed in the West. And to win 50 games and be the 2 or 3 seed in the West, the Rudy Cat thing is not a problem. It has that fear of it has been deleted. And I think, again, we got to remember who's voting on these things, a little bit more narrative based with the media. And, that's the general national media opinion, like take of the Wolves right now, right? Is can't make this work with the roster construction as is a lot of talent. And the narrative would be, if the Wolves are 50 and 32, that Chris Finch has put those two things together it would actually really remind me of, I don't know why this keeps coming to my head, when Tibbs won with the Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I have a list up here of the guys that have won it, and Tibbs with the Knicks, and then actually Mike Brown just last year with the Kings. It's like, from an MVP standpoint, Ant and Carl could cannibalize themselves, and maybe Jaden and Rudy cannibalize themselves on defensive awards and stuff. But it's like the one person that can't really be cannibalized is Finch. And if this team wins 50 games, I think the first time since Kevin Garnett's been here or whatever, like if they do something in the West, that would have put him, I think, on the mantle of like, people like voting for guys like Chris Finch to win it, right? Like they're not going to give it to Michael Malone. They're not going to give it to whoever's coaching the Bucks right now. Like those teams are expected to be really, really good. So that was my favorite bet.
They might try to give it to Mike Conley, but I don't think he'll be on the ballot.
I would vote for him for sure. So I thought that was an interesting one. It's not really a bold prediction because it's 28-1. So I don't think Finch is going to win it. But when I start to think of like future bets, I always am like, okay, what are the good odds? And it's not good odds to say they're going to make the playoffs, but if this team were to be really good, who is probably going to benefit from it the most? And I think it would be Finch, because no one, like Mike Nori's not going to get Coach of the Year votes, right? Like there's really no way to hurt his chances. So that would be something I would sprinkle some, it's payday today for me. So sprinkle some money on, is that if this team is really good and defies the odds, and like you said, he makes an unmakeable thing work, or an unworkable thing work, Finch will probably get a lot of love. And I thought it was interesting that in the GM survey, he was getting love in a situation where the Wolves weren't getting any love. I mean, there are people that really think Chris Finch is an awesome coach. So there you go.
Can you remind me how it works on the making the playoffs thing? Is that need to be top 6, or do you need, is it like getting out of the play-in tournament? I remember that.
No, I think it's just making the playoffs. So you're building, so
you could be in the play-in tournament, win the play-in tournament, like get out of the play-in tournament, and you've made the play. That's what.
Yeah, and don't hold my feet to the fire. But I bet this last year the Wolves would make the playoffs, and yes, they made it through the back door. But I was paid off of that. So.
Okay, so that is what I just forgot how that worked. All right, we're each going to do one bold NBA prediction. You want to start us off there?
Yeah, can I tell you the one? I had just stupid ones. I had an Iowa Wolf will score 50 points this season. I tried my damnedest to try to find what the record was for that, but I know Luka Garza had 47 last year. And again, I go back to how absolutely deep this team is, and guys like Luka and Josh and even Leonard and Wendell won't really play. So I think they're going to be like the bleeping Harlem Globetrotters down there in Des Moines, and they're just going to pummel some teams. But I did this last year.
We should go down there.
Yeah,
we should go down there for a game. And
I will fly into Des Moines.
That sounds like Luka or something. That'd be fun.
Deal. Okay, bold prediction. We will be hanging out at another brewery in some random town in Iowa in November.
I went down there, did a story down there. I will say, I was like,
big fan.
Why am I going to Des Moines? I had a blast down there. We actually got snowed in and like had to stay an extra day. And I think it's like, I was talking to my brother about this when we were at the Twins playoff game the other day, and how like, you know, the St. Paul Saints are now the AAA team or whatever. I was like, man, how sick would it be if the Iowa Wolves were in St. Paul? Like, I mean, I'm psychotic, and so like I would go all the time. But I think like a lot of people would love to go and watch Leonard Miller play, Josh Minot play, you know, Luka Garza all the time. I think like, I know I just watched like a few of those, the like 45-point games from Luka Garza last year, the clips of it. And it's fun. Like, and it's not terrible basketball. It really isn't. It's like a level up for Summer League for sure.
So the one I had that I was going to recycle from last year, but then I like might have single-handedly gotten him hurt.
This is an NBA. Is this?
No, I just want to tell you the one that
cool.
didn't make that fell on the cutting floor or whatever that saying is. The franchise record for most threes made in a single season is 240 by Malik.
Yeah.
Simple math would say that if you hit 3 threes a game, you would break that, 82 times 3. So I was just looking into this because I've wanted to say, I said it last year, that Karl-Anthony Towns will break that record. So 240 made threes. Do you know what the most attempts Karl has ever taken in a season?
Oh, no. 400? I don't know.
366.
Wow.
That is really low volume.
Yeah, because when he was playing 82 games every year, he wasn't shooting threes that much.
So when Malik broke the record and set it at 240, do you know how many threes he took that season?
It must have been like
637. That man is a god. Hang his jersey. So he has taken nearly 300 more threes in a Wolves jersey in one season than Carl's ever taken. So I couldn't say this for this because it's like, even if Carl were to take 400, he's got to shoot. Don't make me do math, but he's got to shoot such a high percentage. And even though he's so efficient, like, so I don't know.
Well, it's even if we always say the number like 8 for Carl, right? That's what you always say, right?
Yeah.
8 threes a game. And then if you say Carl plays 70 games, that's 563s. Like,
that's 5. Yeah.
If he plays 75 games, now you're up. You're still less than Malik took that. Yes.
I thought that was just an interesting number to go to Basketball Reference and see 366. Because, like, what you just said, we're all kind of just penciling in or promoting or manifesting Carl to take 8 threes a game. That would blow his, like, best season out of the water. And so I don't know if it's actually doable. Like, I hope he takes 450 now, just seeing those numbers.
Right. Before I do my bold prediction, this is related, but I asked Finch about what my bold prediction ends up being. This is me asking Finch about the Western Conference this year.
This season, how do you think you're going to kind of like feel that? I mean, all 15 teams in the West over the course of the season, like as a kind of condensed group with a lot of good teams.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I guess there's no real off nights, quote unquote. But, we've been shitty on off nights, so maybe it's best for us just to have a little bit more edge to us. Just put us, heighten our kind of anxiety around some of these wins.
And maybe we just say this every year. It's going to be really good. But there have been previous years, but maybe when you're in Houston or New Orleans or something, where it's been like 48 wins is the 8 seed, just a loaded sort of conference.
Yeah.
Do you remember that feeling different in those seasons?
I can't. I remember. All different variations of the West. When there were teams that were winning 50 games that did make the playoffs. And the East was really, really low at the time, so everyone would go East and stack the wins. And but I don't even see the East being down this year. They're going to be extremely competitive. There's only a handful of teams that are kind of maybe in a rebuilding or a reset mode. So I think it's not just the West. I think it's everywhere. I think could be a lot of teams that are right around 500 all season long.
So that last bit is what I wanted to get, where he says, I think there's a lot of teams that could be 500 all season long, but I wanted to play the first part of the question because he said shitty, and it's always fun to put in. But that is this is my bold prediction. Nobody in the Western Conference wins more than 50 games. And,
I like that. I like that,
I mean, it's another way of saying it's going to be super condensed, et cetera, et cetera. Again, not a 50-50 proposition, but is it crazy that Denver wins 49, 50 games this year as they kind of like gear shift down off of a championship run? Is it crazy that, it takes Phoenix a while? I mean, I think Phoenix is going to be good. But like, is it crazy if they just win 50 games and are not above that? And then if those two things are true, if like Phoenix and Denver are 49-50, then if it's not them, who is it? Who is the the team that clearly exceeds 50? Like, you're talking about some team like the Wolves making some sort of really unexpected leap. Like, who's the third most likely team to win 50 games in the Western Conference? Because it'd be Denver and Phoenix would be the top two.
I would say, and I hate saying this, probably the Lakers.
See, that's what I was thinking too, but it's like, man, aren't the Lakers like a downshift team also? Like, historically, I said, and this one's like, you could poke just as many holes in this. I was like, the Clippers, but like, they're have not been a regular season team at all recently. Like, I don't know who the Western Conference team is that like blows everybody out of the water if Denver isn't like guns blazing to, throughout this year, which I honestly don't think they will be. Like, the bench is going to be something they're going to need to figure out over the course of the year, which that does get you like 4 or 5 wins, or cost you 4 or 5 wins if you have a bad bench. Like they might have a bad bench until the trade deadline. I bet you they'll go get like somebody at the deadline. But I don't know. I haven't really dug into all the other teams and really have my like over under win projections. But just broadly, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if there's a team that's for sure like 55 plus.
Well, there were only 2 teams in the West last year, right? The Nuggets went 53-29, and the Grizzlies went 51-31.
And they don't have a job.
You know what I mean? And like you said, so you're just even condensing it. You're condensing it even more, or the Star Wars moving the walls in or whatever. It's like the Nuggets are going to downshift. The Grizzlies are without their best player for a quarter of the season.
Yeah.
Kings, I think, will have a little regression. The Suns are going to just have, I think, some bad stretches because they are so top heavy. So I like that. And I like a team like the Clippers, I'm pretty out on. I do think the Lakers, as much as it pains me, I've watched them in the preseason a little bit. They're so deep too.
Yeah.
And they are, I think, younger than we maybe give them credit for, simply because, yes, they're like in the Tom Brady phase now of LeBron's the oldest player in the league, but a lot of the guys around him are pretty young, right? I mean, they like re-signed Vando, obviously D'Lo, Gabe Vincent's look really good. They just have a lot of young, just got a lot of young guys. Austin Reeves, so I like that.
And Finch's, sorry, one last thing, like to Finch's point, like the East isn't going to be bad this year either, and like that's when the West had these insane win totals, is because it was a really good conference and the East wasn't good. Like I don't know, I do think Boston and Milwaukee, particularly given that they're going to need to be figuring out some things during the regular season, they're not going to have that downshift, right? I could see both of those teams being 55 or plus, right? And even Philly, there's a handful of teams in the East that I think there might be 3 or 4 teams in the East that have a better record than the second best team in the West. Like I don't know, that's just, again, without super digging into it, kind of where my head is at of just how the overall standings look.
I taking a step back from Timberwolves for a second, and maybe we'll do this next week or something, or you can talk about with another guest. The East is just going to have bad teams. I mean, there's just teams I look up because like someone's got to be bad, right? You look around, it's like I'm really down on like a team like the Hornets and the Wizards and the Pistons and stuff. You look in the West, it's like, who do you know is going to be bad? Because I've watched one Wembanyama game so far, and it's like, oh my God, like they're not going to win less than 25 games. The Rockets have to win games. I think they don't have their pick top 4 protected. Like that's they have an incentive to win. The Blazers are really young, but they've looked feisty. And then Jazz, Mavericks, all those teams. I'll give you mine, and it might segue into a brief conversation about what you do on the side as a private secondary job. But I think only 2 teams from the Northwest Division will make the playoffs. Think about that.
So you're saying the Thunder don't make it?
The Thunder, the Blazers, and the Jazz don't make it.
Yeah.
I am saying, technically speaking, that only 2 teams will make it. That is my prediction. But I have struggled this week with Thunder Week because I know that I'm a big Chet Holmgren guy. I know that, he's looked great in the preseason. I just keep coming back to the last time the Thunder played a basketball game, they lost by 35 to the Wolves. And yes, they didn't have Chet, but the Wolves had, I think, 2 healthy arms between Naz and Jaden. So they weren't necessarily at full strength either. I just don't understand how this team is like, on a national scale being the team that they're going to win 55 games. Yeah. I just don't see it. And I think they'll be fun and have a week where you're like, wow, this team, like the Pelicans, while they had that stretch, they had their own Naz-Reid week for a while. And they're first in the West. And it's like, actually, you know what? They fell completely off the hill. So Denver's a lock to make the playoffs, barring some gruesome injury. But I think only 2 teams make it. And I don't know what the Lakers division is. I think it's like the Pacific. But that is a bloodbath because that's like Lakers, Kings, Clippers, Warriors, Suns. Yeah. All 5 of those teams have to have better odds to make it than a young, promising, but young Thunder team. And I know that hurts because, again, publicly you cover the Timberwolves, but privately I know you want to cover the Thunder.
No, they are my.
You are a dark web Thunder beat reporter.
Hey, I shout out Down to Dunk. I listened to Down to Dunk with Andrew Schlecht. I'm with that. I'm with that too. Like, I don't think the Thunder are going to win more games than the Wolves. I like the Thunder. They got their own experiment going on there too. That is literally like the pocket in your shorts turned inside out of what the Wolves are doing, in just being extremely small. And credit to them. And it was quite frankly like kind of amazing that they were as good of a defense. I have those defensive numbers up right now. But the Thunder were a good defensive, an average offense, average defensive team last season. I guess I'm remembering earlier in the year when they were top 10, that they were able to defend being as small as they were and just make that work.
Yeah.
Was a bit miraculous. And having watched some of those games, it was like, I think they're doing this because they're just trying harder than the other team. You know, like they pushed in transition really good. They did a really good job of getting back in transition. Like super smart, fundamentally sound, really well coached team. The reason to take the Thunder under is that like they are so process oriented as an organization. Like, again, haven't watched the Thunder a good amount. Even last season when they're in like this push for the playoffs, they're rolling out like 11-man rotations often. And it's like, all right, give him Poku another try for these 2 weeks. Usman Jang, it's the second half of the season. We had it planned into our calendar that we're going to boost his minutes in March up into like they do that. They do some things from like a overall top down standpoint that is about a larger goal, which is actually, I respect that. I think that's kind of smart, whatever. But from a winning games in the regular season standpoint, that gets in the way, right? By taking back some of your other players. I know they're bigger with Chet than they were last year when they're starting like Kenrich Williams or one of the Jay Williams at center. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to be bad. It's a little bit, a little bit overreactive to me that they're in that same tier as I think more talented teams like the Wolves and the Pelicans, maybe the Kings. Like they're all in that same sort of 45 win bucket if you look at the win total over unders. And those teams, the Wolves and the Pelicans and the King, like they got their problems, but they're also teams that could be really good if they're able to iron those out. I'm kind of, it's been a little overreactive to
the Thunder are like the closest thing the league has to like a puppy. Like, how do you hate the Thunder? They have great front office. They're probably the most underrated coach in the league. He's really good.
Yeah. How many people right now, let's just pause. How many people, like, do you know the name of the Thunder's coach?
Dang,
like, I know you do, but
right?
like, I think like a lot of people don't. And then, even if you don't know what it is, not that many people know how to say it. Or Dagnalt. I'm not even certain.
Oh, it's Mark?
Yeah, it's Mark.
I would have called him Mike. So we are off to a hot start
maybe I'm
here.
messing it up. I don't know.
But
great coach, though.
I just wonder with the Thunder, again, they have everything you'd want, right? In terms of front office, coach, assets, all this stuff. It's just to have, I don't really think, and we do this all the time, but like we just want to continue to build linear. And I don't think this team is just, they're 42 and they're 40 and 42 last year. They're just going to win 10 more games because Chet plays. It's like, well, I'd like to see Chet play 70 games. And there are not 5 bigger Chet Holmgren fans than me, but it's like he has played once or twice since he got hurt in like a summer pickup game. So
I think both of us are saying like we wouldn't be surprised if they hit the over and win 45 games. But it seems like the energy around the Thunder right now is that they're going to be like a 49 win team.
I
disagree with
tongue in cheek, but when I said that the last time they played a real game, it was against the Wolves and the Wolves beat them by 35. I wonder if the Thunder get a little of that this year, where the Thunder won 40 games last year and surprised the hell out of everyone. That's because most nights they just surprise people. When the spotlight was on them on a national TV game and the Wolves only had one opponent to prep for, they got run out of the building at the Wolves at 60% strength. So I wonder if now the Thunder went from being like a team people sleep on to every night that's like, hey, the Thunder are coming to town. We got to bring our A game. And that's going to, youth usually does not win in the league no matter how talented your youth is. So
and that was again, a fascinating like juxtaposition of where we're at right now in the NBA of like, we did the small ball thing for a while. They're still doing it. The Wolves and some other teams, the Bostons, the Milwaukees, the whatever, are doing big but skilled ball, which is like, in theory, right? If you ask Tim Connolly, it's like, it's the next horizon, right? It's like small ball on steroids. The Thunder aren't buying into that, or maybe they just don't have the roster yet to be able to do that. They're extremely small, and that's what led them to get punked in the play-in game against the Wolves. And you would have to think, if you are a team like the Wolves, like the Celtics, like the Bucks, or a lot of other teams that can go big, your game plan is like, we are imposing our will physically in this game on the glass, and simultaneously being intentional about not letting that team run us, right? Like, they're good at that. Like, they take advantage of teams trying to go after the glass on them. But if that's in your scout, like, I think that's one of their biggest problem. That's enough. As much as I'd like to talk about
Talking Thunder
for
that'd be your next
minutes,
pod.
But let's wrap up this episode, Kyle, with prize picks. We do this every Friday. Kyle and I choose 2 picks each from the Sunday slate of games. Kyle, you can already see mine up on the screen here. Prize Picks is a sponsor. PrizePicks.com, Prize Picks app. Use the promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus if you aren't already on board with this. We love Prize Picks, and it's just a fun way of doing it. Me and Jace got all 4 of ours right on Wednesday. So
yeah, thank you. My bank account appreciates that.
There we
Also,
go.
too, we should add a very scary trend has popped up again from last season. I don't know if you remember this, but you and I also went perfect last week. I said the first week didn't count because I was mentally in Abu Dhabi, but last week we went 3-0. And the one that got like DNP'd was Anthony Richardson over 1.5 touchdowns. But because he left the game early, Prize Picks, like, they do a really good job of, if you say more and a guy gets injured in the first half, they'll like refund you.
Yeah.
But I am very concerned because if you remember last year, for like 8 straight weeks, I'd pick a guy and he'd get a concussion.
Yeah.
So I am frightened about it. Like, I had a really good Jordan Addison one, and I was like, I don't think I can do that to my mental health. So what are your 2 first? Because I see them on the board.
I'm just liking these. It's like 2 players to score a touchdown or not proposition. Last week I did Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard to not score a touchdown.
Okay.
And with you and I, that hit. So maybe I'm doing the like getting in. I don't know. I like that prop. It's a fun, easy thing to be able to kind of like track on a Sunday. So I pulled up the Vikings-Bears game, and it's Alexander Madison and Darnell Mooney more or less than 0.5 touchdowns in this game. And I think it's more likely than not that both of them don't score a touchdown.
Agreed.
So I said less than 0.5 there. And then, sometimes you look at these, again, it's pairings of players. It was both of the Seahawks receivers, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, more or less than 0.5 touchdowns scored. And I'm going to say more for that one. So those are my 2.
Again, there's a good Jordan Addison receiving yards at 54.5, but I don't need that man to get hurt for on my own mentals. So Justin Fields in that same game, over 1.5 passing / rushing / receiving touchdowns. I mean, just he's one of the biggest threats to run one in. So why would that not? And again, the Vikings, that game is probably going to be pretty high scoring. I know it's in Chicago. And then the other one I had was,
I dare you to do a less than.
Oh, well, anyway, Coach, I'm gonna do Jamar Chase over 86.5 receiving yards. A little narrative there, but I think as we were talking off screen, you made a acquisition of DK Metcalf this week in your fantasy league.
Yes.
He said something about that he thought their secondary, Seattle, would shut down Jamar Chase, and then I think Jamar Chase liked the tweet. That's all I need. So he is gonna. He had 192 yards and I think 3 touchdowns, tutties last week against the Cardinals. They're at home. I think the Bengals are back. Joe Burrow looks healthy, and I think Jamar Chase is a stone cold lock for 100 receiving yards. So,
love it. Let's recap it. Kyle's are more than 86.5 receiving yards for Jamar Chase, more than 1.5 passing plus rushing plus receiving touchdowns for Justin Fields. I have DK Metcalf and Tyler Metcalf combining for more than half a touchdown.
Tyler Lockett, Tyler Metcalf, shout out to homie.
Tyler
no
Metcalf,
ceilings.
DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Yo, what's up, Tyler? And then Alexander Madison and Darnell Mooney, less than 0.5 rushing receiving touchdowns on Prize Picks. This is just fun. Football season is my favorite thing to do with it. But Kyle, we're going to do this at a separate date. I think this is pretty sweet that they just have season props for this, where it's like, I'm just looking at the top one right here. LeBron James to average more or less than 27.1 points per game this season. Like they have a decent amount of those just per game numbers, rebounds, assists, threes made, whatever. That's going to be fun. I haven't had the chance to really dig into any of that stuff yet, but let's make sure we do that on a pod before the season starts. But again, prizepicks.com, PrizePicks app. I appreciate you guys rolling with us.
You can bet
doing these.
You can bet technical fouls, and there's like on the season.
Really?
And there's Josh Giddey over under 0.5 technical fouls. I'm gonna rock the hell out of under. He's one of the nicest guys in the league. So I'll give you an under
Mike
next
Conley
week.
2.0.
Yeah, Mike Conley's over under is set at negative 0.5. Like, can Mike get even less than 0? No, and then again, as we always do, and we'll do this list throughout the season, but I was just scrolling through our page. If you're listening to this on Apple and Spotify, take 10 seconds, quick, pause the podcast, give a review, give a rating. That stuff matters to us. It's the only compensation we need. And then also, too, our YouTube page now is fully up and running again, so shout out to Cooper for that. But we're doing things that don't even make sense to me, but we got shorts and we got TikToks, and I think you're even going to dabble with some, like, once the season gives you enough meat, you're going to start doing just play breakdown, small videos that might not even be normal podcasts. So we're just
I'm excited about that. I don't know. I'm not sure if I've talked about that really. Like I thought about doing it off of the Abu Dhabi games, but it's like, all right, maybe we don't need to do a full breakdown of that. But I think that'll be fun. I mean, people who follow me on Twitter, or whatever, I'm tweeting out clips all the time and doing that. I'm going to try and kind of take some of that, put them all together on YouTube for little 8-10 minute sort of things. And then, tweet those out on Twitter as well. But yeah, that'll be a fun thing to do. We're just trying to do more different things this season. And yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah, subscribe. It's a bit. I had to tell my dad this. Like, you're not gonna get any notifications or emails. It's not like when you subscribe to Bed Bath and Beyond. Just like subscribe so we can build up our numbers. So more people that log into any of those apps or Apple, Spotify, YouTube, it pops up right there. That's big for us because one thing that's real is like, I know you're still going to tweet out all the links and stuff this season, but there is some weird algorithm stuff with like links in tweets not really showing. So if you want to know as soon as this pops up, and we've been getting them out hot, right? Like, again, Cooper's getting them posted. So subscribe. We appreciate you. And we'll do less of this when the season starts, but I'm excited. We've got through all the growing pains. We have employees, we have staff, we have a TikTok account. It's hot. So we just need basketball again. We need brunch.
And it's coming. It's Saturday. This Saturday, they play the Knicks, and then Tuesday Maccabi, Thursday Chicago. I believe would love again to see a bunch of you hang out on Saturday with me and Britt and Cooper and the Falling Egg staff and a bunch of just
free tickets,
Wolves fans. Yeah,
free tickets like to good games.
Yeah, we'll like if you buy a beer, you get a raffle ticket. We'll call those out during the pod, after the pod, during the game. Should have some merch and stuff that we'll give away. Falling Knife is going to be selling some other merch there. But, again, hopefully it's just a fun way to get everyone together to watch a Wolves game together while we can do it, kind of afford to do it because it's the preseason. So we'd love to see you at Falling Knife. Kyle, I appreciate you coming on here today. We'll do something else prediction-y here in, I guess we got 12 days until the season starts.
I'm excited. Like I said, it was great to have them back in our lives, and they disappeared. So real games, right? I mean, real competitive. I think this will pick up again. The Knicks, are going to play hard. I don't know what words you said of who they play on Tuesday. Not familiar with them. Mac something. But then on Thursday too, like this is big because now I thought we got real snippets during those first two games against the Mavs, right? Like that's how I built all my predictions. Is you're starting to see Finch showing his hand a little bit. You're going to start to see the rotation, I think, maybe even tighten up a little bit, and you'll get a better idea of what this is going to look like come October 25th when they tip this thing off for real against the Toronto Raptors.
Can't wait. He's Kyle Theige. Follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. If you need more Kyle's dulcet tones in your ears, you can listen to him over at Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey as well. Next episode up in the feed will be whatever the heck me and Britt talk about at Falling Knife, which should be fun. We'll kind of just do maybe a looser season preview, and then also take listener questions or people asking questions who are at the event. So that should be up probably on Sunday, and we'll keep rolling into Monday with Chris Hine and do it all over again. So until I see you all of you at Falling Knife on Saturday, he's Kyle, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Grinning hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.